Welcome to the book of Lamentations. It begins, "And it came to pass, after Israel was taken, and Jerusalem was made desolate, Jeremiah sat down weeping and wailed this lamentation over Jerusalem and said," Jeremiah. So we have a narrator in this very first verse telling us that this was written by Jeremiah, sat down weeping and wailing this lamentation over Jerusalem. And then what he said. Now, if you go to Wikipedia and you look up the book of Lamentation, you find these same people that try to change the Bible by saying that, well, we don't really think today that Jeremiah really wrote this. It was something else, and yak. You can go to Wikipedia, and they're doing this throughout the Bible, and I'm pretty sure I know what group of people are doing it. They're basically anti-Christian and anti-Bible because the Christians read the Old and the New Testament. They know what's in it, probably better than these other people do. But these other people come against the knowledge that God has given others than themselves, and will lie and say things, make things up, and put it into Wikipedia. And the delusion that's being set up for the beast is amazing. As I go through this book, 5 chapters, it's taken as far as what Jeremiah sees what's happening. As right here it says, Jerusalem was fallen, Israel was taken, and the lamentation. But I'd like to relate it to, as we go through, the Jerusalem and the Israel today. If these conditions still exist, and if they do, what is the cause of it, and what is the repercussions, and what will happen because of these things if they're still going on. And so as we go through, I'd like to bring that out. So now, the very first verse, so what did Jeremiah say? He says, "Oh, how the city being filled with peoples sits alone. She became as a widow, becoming filled in the nations, ruling in the regions. She became for tribute." So Jerusalem today is filled. It's a country of 70 years. Now it's become a country, but it's not a widow. But yet the future, as we saw it in Ezekiel, shows, I believe, the destruction of Israel, Jerusalem. It shows it pretty much throughout that whole book. And then for a future new city being built on a high hill, which is west of the Lake of Galilee, where the temple will be built, and water will run down into the Dead Sea and so forth. We just finished the book of Ezekiel, and then this is the next book as we have been going through in the video seminars. So it's in the Bible earlier, but we're going through it after we've done all of the minor prophets and the major prophets, and this is the last book, and then we're going to go into Ezra and Nehemiah. So he continues, Jeremiah, "In weeping, she wept the night." And that she, I believe, would be Israel. And it goes back and forth here between she and her, and his and I. And so try to figure out who is speaking. I'll try to come up with the best explanation as we get to these places that I've come up with. "And her tears are upon her cheeks, and existed not the one comforting her." That's nobody comforting Israel because of her destruction. "From out of all the ones loving her, all the ones being found of her, discarded in her, and they became to her for enemies." So Israel at that time was discarded and went to the enemies, became part of their subject of the enemies, and I believe this is what could possibly be in store for the future Jerusalem that doesn't go along with the things of God that he would have them to do. "Judea was displaced from her humiliation and from the multitude of her servitude. She stays among the nations. She did not find rest. All the ones pursuing her overtook her in the midst of one's afflicting. And again, the future, this is what would happen with Jerusalem if it fell on Israel, that the ones that are pursuing her would be afflicting her, and a lot of countries would love to see the destruction of Jerusalem. I just watched a speech by the President of the United States today and talking about the problems in the world, and Iran is ready to attack Israel. It says it is. And so what happens, we don't know. Syria, the northern part of the north of Israel today, Damascus is the capital. It's being backed up by the Russian army, the Russian military, I should say. And so Israel is in the midst of all of this, and war could break out. And although it doesn't mean, I'm not saying that Israel would lose a war right now. I think it's probably going to win. They defeat a lot of nations. I don't believe they would be the same as the Gog and Magog war, 38 and 39th of Ezekiel. I believe that's for after the 1,000 years. But Israel could still become a world power where the beast would then come. The ways of Zion, that's the Mount Zion, where Jerusalem is, mourned by reason of the not being ones in the holiday feast. All her gates have been obliterated. Her priests are groaning. Her virgins are being led captive, and she is being embattled in herself. So is that a future? What would happen to Israel if it walked away from God or it doesn't join up with God? I don't see them joining up yet. The ones afflicting her became for the head, and her enemies are straightened. So Israel is now behind, under their power. For the Lord humbled her over the multitude of her impieties. So we see the conviction here, or the impiety of Israel. Now, is Israel impious today? I see homosexuality and gays and lesbians taking a stronghold in Israel, of all places. And it's in the news, even in the Jerusalem Post. A woman who is a singer apparently has praised Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is a Supreme Court justice in the United States, who basically is a head of the feminist movement, and brought in abortions and encouraged them. So these are the impieties today that are going on. Her infants went in captivity in front of one afflicting. So the mother and the baby, and went forth from out of the daughter of Zion all her beauty. Her rulers became as rams not finding pasture, and not going in strength in front of the one pursuing. To be in their weakened. Israel at this time in the future could very well be in a weakened state. For whatever reason, God is in charge, not Israel. Jerusalem remembered the days of her humiliation and her repulsions, all her desirable things, as many as were from out of ancient days, in the falling of her people into the hands of one afflicting, and not was one helping her. And that could be very well in the future, that the ones afflicting her will take over, and the Jews will be separated again from Israel, as they have so many times, because of the rejection of God. And how do you say, well, how did they reject God? Well, the rejection of the Messiah that came in form of Jesus Christ was rejected. So now they're an anti-Christian country who are against the Christ. And so that does not put them in good standing with the Lord. And I'm sure that eventually punishment will be dealt out with them. In seeing her, her enemies laughed over her displacement. People were glad to see Israel gone. Today, a lot of countries I mentioned would love to see that happen, where they're waiting for it. But it says, Jerusalem sinned on account of this, and she became for tossing about. All the ones glorifying her humbled her, for they beheld her indecency. So the indecency of this country, that Israel is not broadcasting the things of God, the good things. Instead, indecency is what it's bringing out, and other people can see the indecency that she is proposing. And indeed, she is moaning herself and turns to the rear. Her uncleanness is before their feet. She remembered not her end, and she was brought down enormously. There is not the one comforting her. So Israel, back in that time, was taken captive by the Babylonians, who took her, wanted to take her, defeated it, and they were gone. As I mentioned, there's a great musical on YouTube called The Chorus of the Hebrew Slaves by Verdi, an opera from Nabucco, which means Nebuchadnezzar. In Greek, it's Nabucco, Nabucodonosor. And this opera has a famous chorus of the Hebrew slaves and their humiliation and looking back on Jerusalem. Very poignant video, highly recommended. Behold, O Lord, my humiliation, for the enemy was magnified. Now we go into 9. Now who is the my humiliation? Well, probably Jeremiah here. For the enemy was magnified, humiliation. The one afflicting, his hand spread forth upon all the desirable things of hers. And now, who is the hers? I believe this is a personification of Israel. For Israel saw nations entering into Israel's sanctuary. So I believe the nations will again, they've seen it with the Romans, and I believe they'll see it again in the future. The ones which I charge not them to enter into your assembly. So these, all of these people that were unbelievers that God didn't want have now come into the sanctuary. All her people are groaning, and her here is probably Israel, I'm sure, seeking bread. They gave the desirable things of hers, of Israel's, for food to restore their soul. Behold, O Lord, and look upon. Now, who is Jeremiah is probably one saying this. Behold, O Lord, and look upon, for she, that is Israel, became as one being disgraced. So, look upon it. Help. Now he's making a supplication for Israel. And in the future, I'm sure if she was taken, there would be those that loved it and would make a supplication to God to somehow deliver them. And that's a big part, I believe, of this book of Lamentations. We'll get into that supplication part of Israel. So, all the ones coming near to you in the way, turn and see if there is a pain in my pain which happened. Now, here, this could be either Jeremiah or this is a personification of repentant Israel saying this because it gets into, as we see here, it doesn't seem so much as a person as the people. The one uttering a sound to me humbled me. The Lord, the one uttering a sound to me humbled me. The Lord humbled me. Now, is it Jeremiah or is it Israel? In a day of anger of his rage. I don't believe the rage of God was against Jeremiah. From out of his height he sent fire in my bones. And so I believe that would be Israel, and let it down. He opened and spread out a net to my feet. I captured him, and he turned me to the rear. He appointed me for being removed from view an entire day for grieving. Jeremiah stayed actually, well, he stayed in Israel until he went with some of the people into Egypt and then came back. And so I believe he's talking about Israel as a personification of it being like a person talking. Jehovah, was vigilant concerning my acts of impiety, vigilant to do something about it. They are closely joined in my hands. He's making an act of repentance, acknowledging that they did these wrong things. They ascended into my neck. My strength is weakened, for the Lord put griefs in my hand. I shall not be able to stand. The Lord lifted away all my strong men. So I don't think that would be Jeremiah. I think that would be Israel. From out of the midst of me, from out of Israel. He called upon me a time to break my choice men. The Lord trod the wine vat for the virgin daughter of Judah. And treading the wine vat, the rage, and it's in the book of Revelation. Also, so this future time of Israel being destroyed, same as here. Over these things I weep. My eye led down water as he cried, for far from me is the one comforting me, the one restoring my soul. So it realizes, if we realize also as sinners that we have sinned, and the one that is comforting is there, God is there, he can restore our soul. He restored my soul after walking away for 13 years and running into all kinds of disasters. And so now in the restoration to God, he's able to do that. And Israel will see this, I believe, in the future of this restoring them to the things of God. And apparently the last 10 chapters of Ezekiel will be a restoration of the Jewishness of Israel. It doesn't have anything about Christ in there that I see, and it's on the earth, not in the New Jerusalem, where I believe the Christians will have been taken by that time. My sons were obliterated, that is Israel's, for the enemy conquered. Zion, that's Jerusalem, opened and spread out her hands, gave up. There is not one, the one comforting her. The Lord gave charge to Jacob, that is Israel. Jacob was the name. His name was changed to Israel by God. The Lord gave charge to Jacob. Round about him are the ones afflicting him, and are still today. Jerusalem became as a woman sitting apart, unclean, in the midst of them. An unclean woman having her menstrual cycle at the time with the unclean would be the rags that are saturated with blood from the menstrual cycle, of putting that person as unclean, Levitically unclean, to be set apart. And this is what he's showing, that Jerusalem is the same. It's something you didn't want to see. You don't want to touch it. You don't want to be by it. Jerusalem became as a woman sitting apart, unclean, in the midst of them, of everybody. Today it's still pretty much the same way. A lot of Christians have supported Israel so far, but as Israel becomes more and more anti-Christian, I believe that support will fail. As I see it, a lot of Christians, when Israel became a nation, saw Israel as God's righteousness on the earth and bringing back a divine country like it was at the beginning, and having nothing but the best hopes for Israel. But as the time goes by, it gets worse and worse. So how worse it gets in the future, this is 2018, September the 24th, we'll find out. The Lord is just, for I greatly embittered his mouth. He's guilty, he's saying. Hear indeed, all peoples, and behold my pain. Israel, it's painful what's going on. They're being destroyed over and over again. Nebuchadnezzar, Sennacherib, the Egyptians, the Romans. My virgins and my young men were gone into captivity. I called my lovers, but they misled me, the ones that were helping Israel, the Assyrians at one place, and the Egyptians, and even the Babylonians came and helped at one time. My priests and my elders failed in the city, for they sought food for themselves, that they should restore their lives. And I don't even see a priesthood in Israel today, and the elders and if that's there, I don't know where it would be. The city failed, for they sought food for themselves, that they should restore them, do it for themselves. Behold, O Lord, for I am afflicted. Downtrodden Israel. My belly was disturbed, and my heart was turned within me. It's like when you have an upset stomach and it's just gurgling and turning, and you're disturbed, you're bent over and holding your stomach, and your heart was turned within me, going through heart pains. Greatly embittering, I was embittered. So what happens when everything is kicked out? Everything is taken away. Everything that means anything to you, you're left there alone. You don't have anybody to help you. You're childless. Like here it says, outside the sword made me childless, as if a death in the house. So you're by yourself. Nobody's hurt. Now your house is being destroyed, and you may be being taken in a cruel way, in manacles and chains, to a place that's going to be worse than where you were. And it's a terrible place to be. And this is what was happening to Israel, and may happen again. It happened to them in Nazi Germany. They were all taken and captive and taken to concentration camps and killed, murdered. Here indeed that I moan, yelling out, the imperative. Here indeed I moan. There is not the one comforting me. No one's helping me. All my enemies heard the bad things concerning me, and they rejoice that you did it. You brought on the day. You called the time, and they became alike to me. You're in charge, and you did it, and it's all beyond my control. May all their evils enter before your face. So now all the people that are against him, making fun of him, see what they're doing. Watch what they're doing, Lord. Deal with them. And glean them in which manner they made a gleaning for all of my sins. For my moanings are many, and my heart frets. Terrible situation to be in when everything is kicked out from under you. It reminds me of the people of the Soviet Union who were all happy to see Vladimir Lenin come from, Vienna, someplace, on a train and get off into Russia and become the leader of the revolution and killing the Tsar, and then becoming a strong country, trying to build the country up. But and a lot of the people wanted this communism, socialism. They didn't want anything to do with God. They kicked God out of the country, made it illegal, made it an atheistic country. And 70 years later, all these people who wanted all of this, all of a sudden, whammo, God, almost in a couple of weeks, a month, pulled the carpet from under their feet, and they're left with nothing. Didn't have enough food, nothing. It was terrible shape. It's not now, but it was then. And so when you have everything pulled out from underneath, then that's a time when a lot of people do come to the Lord, as here they are seeing, or Jeremiah, whoever, realizes the repercussions of walking away from God. And I know from experience the repercussions. It's not something I would ever do again. And I pray that the Lord would bless you, keep you strong in his bosom. And we'll continue on with the second chapter, where the Lord talks about the destroying Israel and Judah. Remember, this is a lamentation, a lament. Threnody is the Greek is the English word for a lamentation. Threne is Arameos. Threne and Threnody is a lament or a sad song. So we'll go into the next chapter, and hope you'll join us, and God bless.